EP 120, Chapter 9, Topics Spinal Cord and an Introduction to the Brain. So, the spinal cord. The spinal cord is a nervous tissue structure that is continuous with the brain, and the spinal cord officially begins at the foramen magnum. So, as soon as nervous tissue exits the foramen magnum, it is now spinal cord. The spinal cord then ends around the intervertebral discs between the first and second lumbar vertebrae. The spinal cord does not travel the full length of the vertebral canal. We can break the spinal cord into 31 segments, and each segment has a pair of spinal nerves, a right and left spinal nerve. When we look at a transverse section of the spinal cord, we see gray matter on the inside, white matter on the outside. We see the dorsal root of the spinal nerve coming out the posterior side of the spinal cord, leading to a dorsal root ganglion, where there's lots and lots of sensory neuron cell bodies. And then coming off of the anterior side of the spinal cord is the ventral root. And then the ventral root and dorsal root fuse together to form the spinal nerve. So spinal nerve formed from dorsal and ventral root, formed from sensory information going to the spinal cord and motor commands coming from the spinal cord, making all spinal nerves mixed nerves. The spinal cord has two enlargements. It has a widened area in the cervical region called the cervical enlargement, sending nerves to the upper limbs. And then it has a wider area called the lumbar enlargement, and that is sending nerves to the lower limbs. Again, here is the axon with the white matter. We have lots of myelinated axons, and gray matter, we have lots of neural cell bodies. The space in the posterior side of the spinal cord is called the posterior median sulcus. Space in the anterior area is the anterior median fissure. So the spinal cord is almost broken in half with the posterior median sulcus and the anterior median fissure. Then in the center area is a small hole that forms part of the central canal. Cerebral spinal fluid runs through the central canal, running up and down the length of the spinal cord. You also can break the white matter up into smaller chunks. You have the posterior funiculus in the back, the lateral funiculus on the side, and the anterior funiculus toward the front. Anterior funiculus, lateral funiculus, posterior funiculus. And then you can break the gray matter up into pieces. You got the posterior horn toward the back, lateral horn to the side, anterior horn toward the front. And then that gray bar, that gray mass of tissue connecting the right and left sides, that is the gray commissure. So the central canal is within the gray commissure. And then, of course, on the other side, posterior horn, lateral horn, anterior horn. Now, the spinal cord has a variety of functions. One function is it houses the spinal reflexes, such as the withdrawal reflex. And of course, as we know, these reflexes don't need the brain. They can occur just through the spinal cord. The other big important function is the spinal cord transmits impulses to the brain, going up to the brain and coming down from the brain. So we have ascending tracts of sensory information going to the brain and descending tracts of motor commands coming from the brain. And a tract is just a collection of axons in the nervous system. So here is a view of the spinal cord. This is the posterior side. Here's the dorsal roots. The dura mater is the sheet right here. There's the vertebra. Here's the subarachnoid space. The posterior median sulcus. Pretty cool. Brain. The brain is the largest, most complex portion of the nervous system. There's over 100 billion multipolar neurons, over 100 billion interneurons. That is huge. The brain is arranged slightly different from the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, the gray matter is on the inside, the white matter is on the outside. With the brain, most of the gray matter is toward the surface, toward the outside. and the white matter is toward the inside, although there are some exceptions. So the brain can be broken up into four portions. You have the cerebrum, which is the largest portion of the brain. You have the cerebellum, the smaller wrinkly mass in the back, the brain stem connecting to the spinal cord, and the diencephalon. Diencephalon being a portion of the brain that we cannot see from the surface. We can only see it when we cut through the brain. And I'm going to point out that there is a seahorse in the brain. So if you think of this portion here with the diencephalon as a seahorse head, here's its mouth, and here's the neck and body of the seahorse and the seahorse's tail. Seahorse will not be on any exams, but sometimes I will refer to it to give an idea of where structures are found. And that is it for this part of the lecture.